You know Shaletta makes you laugh, but did you know Shaletta Brundage can also make you think and boost your business? Media personality, activist, and comedian Shaletta Brundage founded Shaletta Makes Me Laugh to celebrate and share the best of Black culture. It's a podcasting platform. You can download 10 weekly podcasts hosted by African-American subject experts at ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com is also a production house, creating broadcast-quality commercial content. And Shaletta and her team of storytellers create powerful promotional campaigns to get businesses the brand awareness they're looking for. Some of Minnesota's top businesses trust Shaletta, and you can too. Get out the word about your events and products and get in front of communities of color with ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. She's got the power to help your business.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Financially Fit Podcast. I am your host, Andre Creighton. As always, I'm excited to be here with you all today. Thank you for those that continue to listen to our podcast. Our numbers are increasing every single week. I hope that you're getting something fruitful out of our conversation that's helping drive your business forward into the new year. And for those that are new, welcome. This is the podcast where we talk about the things that are going to help us along our journey, right? Along our journey as business owners, entrepreneurs, founders, executives, etc. Right? We want to be able to leave here with some foundational things that can help drive our business forward into the new year. And I always say that this is not a podcast where you're going to get something that's a silver bullet that will fix whatever's happening in your business overnight. I truly believe that it is a marathon, not a sprint. So all the things are intentionally around us building that foundation, that core that can help us create sustainability. So today we're talking about finishing the year strong. As we're getting close to year end, I want to touch on a few things that entrepreneurs, founders should be thinking about and focused on as we are nearing year end. I think most founders think that growth starts in January, but to be honest with you, growth actually starts with the work you do right now before the year end turns, right? So we want to start doing that work now. Like, yes, it's important to run our projections, to have our budgets in place, but mentally, the things that we do with our team and with ourselves today in December is what's going to drive us to be able to create that growth and scalability in 2026. So I want to talk a little bit about the planning trap. So I think that a lot of business owners and founders overestimate January and they underestimate December. And I'll tell you why. I think there's this perception that, it's the end of the year, like Christmas is coming around, or the holidays, whatever is being celebrated in your household is coming around, and uh, people aren't doing business. People are taking time off. Things are going to be slow, and yeah, to an extent that is true. But to an extent, there also are people that have budget for December or for this year that are trying to spend that budget for this year, right? So I think oftentimes we say, "Oh, it's fine. I'm just going to close out the year," and that deal that we were trying to get through the pipeline or through the sales funnel in December is likely not going to happen, so we'll just worry about it in January. The reality is, like, we want to try to close that deal in December, right? We want to try to keep that momentum going into January versus like kind of settling down and then trying to find a ramp up in January. Oftentimes we'll tell ourselves, yep, we'll fix that in Q1, or we'll align the team after the break. And the reality is January doesn't reset momentum. January exposes what you failed to tighten up in December. So whatever you don't confront this month becomes twice as expensive in February. So, if you don't fix it right now, January is going to come, you're going to fix it in January, you're going to pay for it in February. So I think that it's a planning trap, and we need to be aware of that. So why year end matters more? You know, I I've been guilty of this too as a finance leader. Like I do my budget in October, November timeframe. I feel very good about the budget. Maybe even do a forecast of the budget of where I think revenue is going to hit. Maybe I'm doing a couple different scenarios, kind of like my pessimistic, my optimistic, and then the in between, just to be able to have you know put what my mind is really thinking onto paper. And all of that's great, but the reality is there's more important reasons why year end matters, and here's why. There's really three major forces at play. One, decisions slow down, but costs don't. So hiring, sales, approvals, those are all slower, right? But the reality is your burn rate stays the same or it grows, right? There might be subscriptions that you pay on an annual and maybe they're coming due in January, right? So you're going to pay that large sum of that subscription in January, which is going to increase that burn rate, right? In that month, or the cash flow is going to decrease, but you're not actually getting the sales that you were expecting in January because you slowed down in December, right? And for a lot of businesses, that could be very detrimental, right? Um, Now, for most, I think that most understand the seasonality of their business. And they understand, you know, the cost within their business and the cash flow and how things are flowing. So they're usually prepared for those things. But for those that aren't, like this is why December is so important for us to continue to create that momentum. So then number two, the team carries the December story into Q1. And I think this is one of the most underrated issues that occurs in the business. If you don't set the standard for what you want the next year to be going into January, your team is going to continue under the same assumptions that they used in 2025 or the current year, right? So, um, if you have clear goals now, you're going to have a fast start, right? It's just like, if you are a track, if you're a runner, right? And maybe you're running the 100, right? You go every single day and you practice those blocks, right? If you don't practice those blocks, you're going to get out of the gate slower. The same is true with your team. If you don't practice what your strategy is, you don't let your team in on what the strategy is going into new year and what the changes are prior to us getting into the new year, you're going to start slow. So this is where Q1 can get very expensive, and then we can see it might take us weeks or months to be able to get our teams aligned, which can be costly from a revenue and also an expense OpEx perspective. So then the third one is investors test preparedness early. So maybe you are taking on investor dollars, maybe you already have investors, maybe somewhere in between, right? In January, investors look for clarity, not figuring it out. If you are still figuring it out in January, and that doesn't mean that like you're gonna know every single thing, right? The investors don't expect you to. Um, I mean, this is why it's a startup, right? Is they expect you to have like a hypothesis and to have some use cases and to have shown some market penetration, right? But from an execution standpoint, if you're still figuring it out and you haven't relayed that message to your team and they're still figuring it out, investors don't like that. And the reality is the prepared founders get the funding conversations. The unprepared get pushed to deferred to the summer. So doesn't mean that just because you're unprepared that investors aren't gonna take a look at you, right? They just might say, hey, I need you to go do XYZ. It doesn't seem like you're quite ready right now. The worst case scenario is they say, yeah, I'm not really interested, and they never talk to you again. But the reality is they'll probably defer and push you out until the summer, especially if they feel like you have a product that is sellable and can scale. They'll likely say, yep, come back to me in the summer when you have things a little more baked out and maybe some more use cases, blah, 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 right? So let's talk about the core of this episode, the founder year in playbook. So let's talk about what actually moves the needle in December. So the first thing is give the team clarity now. This is so important. Don't wait until January. Give your team the clarity right now. January should be execution, not alignment. Set 3 to 5 priorities and weekly metrics and tie them to everything that we do. It should be the way that we move, the way that we breathe, the way that we live within our business, right? Set those 3 to 5 priorities as a foundation. And then from there, we should have all of our OKRs and things that we're doing within our business on a daily basis that are driving towards those 3 to 5 priorities, right? That is, if you all, have, gosh, I'm drawing a blank right now. Oh man, we'll come back to that. But um, I'm forgetting the name, but I used to run these back in an old company where you have these level 10 meetings, and the level 10s are where you really are going through the metrics and all the priorities that are helping you kind of keep the priorities top of mind and really being able to make sure the company is driving forward. I got it now. Sorry about that. EOS. So when I was at an old company, we used what we called EOS. It's from the book Traction. I highly encourage you all to read Traction if you have not. EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And this is basically a system that helps us think about how do we set priorities, how do we have KPIs that are formed to those priorities, and how do we have tasks on a weekly basis that we're doing that are driving the KPIs to those benchmarks. I love it. I think it's a really good way for simplistic way for a business to start and to create alignment across a team. Um, but neither here or there, at the end of the day, we want to be able to give our teams the clarity that they need, and it needs to start now. Number two, refresh your cash model before break. So we want to understand what's true runway. What hires can we actually afford? Like, yes, we have our audacious goals of the the hires that we want to have, our wish list, right? But what can we actually afford? And you don't know that if you don't have a good cash model. Any revenue timing shifts. So, is there any seasonality that we notice in our revenue in the prior year that is going to continue in 2026? And how are we preparing ourselves for that from a cash flow perspective? Funding needs, we need to understand what our funding needs are early in Q1. So we should be able to understand, hey, are we going to raise capital this year if you're a high flying tech company, or maybe you're a venture backable company. If you're not a venture backable company and maybe you're a bootstrap company, are we going to need to provide more capital ourselves as the owner? And what is the timing around when we're going to need to provide that capital? We want to be able to understand that so we can be planful and not have surprises. Number three, tighten your metric narrative. So um, we don't want our dashboards to be just a dump of information, right? We want it to be a simple story that tells us really 4 things: what's working, what's not, what's improving, and what needs change. So I'll say that one more time. Our dashboard should not just be a dump of information. Of course, it's going to have information that's going to drive the story to tell us these 4 things: what's working, what's not, what's improving, and what needs to change. This is so important. And when we break it down with this simplicity, like, this is what allows us to continue to grow and for us to really understand our company. When we're just inundated with tons of information, it can be overwhelming. I'm a information data guy. Like, I love information as a finance guy. And the reality is, even I get overwhelmed with data, especially when it's not organized in a way that is is it, when it's not organized in a way for me to retain it, right? So I think if you keep those 4 things in mind, that will be the core to how you receive your data. And then lastly, separate real goals from wishes. So, obviously, as founders or entrepreneurs, like, we love optimism. Optimism is what got us into this world in general, right? We were optimistic that, hey, I have something, an idea so cool that I could bring to market that I think will change the world or change the way that we do something in the world. And that's great. But the reality is that we also want to set real goals. Like, yes, we want to have optimism, but we want to have real goals that are actually obtainable. You know, if we don't have real goals, what I know about year end and Q1 is Q1 punishes us for unclear strategy. And it's hard to have a clear strategy if you don't have real goals. Lastly, every initiative should ladder up to a real priority, not your wish list priority, a real priority. So if you can do these four things at year end, I think as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you're in a really good spot to have a very aligned team come January to be able to execute on said goals, and as a founder to really be a step ahead of like most people that are entrepreneurs. So if you don't do these things, what will happen is you'll let December drift. Um, January will assume everything that you did not prioritize in December, and that will result in misalignments, sloppy KPIs, cash uncertainty, and a month of scrambling. So the lack of clarity can cost you progress and credibility, to be quite honest with you. So, what I encourage all entrepreneurs is to end strong and to start strong. And yes, that sounds very cliche, but the reality is if you end strong, you're positioning yourselves to start the year strong. So, reflection challenges for you this week are, what are you avoiding that will cost you time and money in January? I want you to think about that, write it down, and we should be attacking this in the last, few weeks that we have of December. Um, which goal do you need to kill, commit to, or clarify before the year ends? So, we want to be able to understand what are the goals that we need to kill, we need to get rid of completely, what are the ones we need to commit to, and then what are the ones that we need to clarify. If we can do those three things and we can communicate that effectively to our teams, we will be well off on a very good start to, one, into December and year end, and then a good start into Q1 in January. So, with that being said, I hope that this is helpful. I hope that you learned something today as you are gearing up for year end. I know it can be a very stressful time of the year, both from a business perspective, but also a family perspective as well. And what I'll encourage you is to hang in there. Like, we're going to get through this. We always do, but let's do the work now, because if we don't do the work now, when January comes, we're going to be behind the eight ball. So, as I always say, it's the power. It's not about how much money you make. The power is in how much money you keep. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Andre Creighton. I really enjoyed being here with you all today, and I look forward to seeing you all on the next episode of the Financially Fit Podcast. Take care.
I drew you this year.
Oh, I love scratch games. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome, Tabitha.
They're so sparkly.
Festive, right?
You know it's a good gift when it's hard to let it go.
Kinda wish I drew myself.
Kinda glad you didn't.
Holiday scratch games from the Minnesota Lottery are great to give and even better to get.
So thoughtful.
I know.
You've been putting it off and time is running out. You've got just a few weeks left to apply for the Minnesota Promise Act grants. The state has more than 60 million with an M, dollars to help small businesses in greater Minnesota and parts of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Now, hurry up and go to mnpromiseact.org to fill out the application. And listen, if you need help getting it completed, don't trip. They've got trained pros who can guide you through it. Make an appointment to get started today.